Hello and welcome to Labor Lens. I am Sharon Ijason. On this week's episode of the program, we'll be discussing all about the COVID-19 pandemic and how it's affecting the world of work, especially the organized private sector. The leadership of the Nigeria Union of Petroleum and Natural Gas Workers (NUPENG) has announced that workers in the downstream sector will join the front line in the fight against coronavirus pandemic in Nigeria. This was announced after a meeting to examine the critical roles oil and gas workers play in the socio-economic landscape of the country. After the discussion, it was concluded that the country needs essential services to continue to run, as well as services of those in the front lines of the fight to curtail the spread of the virus. All members that are on the value chain of distribution of petroleum products for commercial, industrial, and domestic uses will continue to work. This set of workers include the petroleum tanker drivers, petrol station workers, petroleum products depot workers, oil and gas suppliers, as well as liquefied petroleum and gas retailers. NUPENG promised to provide necessary safety kits at various loading points and to all petroleum tanker drivers. The union also urged all petroleum depot owners, operators, petrol stations owners, and industrial setups to provide necessary mechanism and tools, including social distancing at their various locations and logistics. The union insists that any worker who is not in direct line of loading and distribution of petroleum products on any particular day are directed to stay at home to avoid unnecessary crowd at operational locations.
The hospital has also brazen up to, first of all, identify probable cases and refer appropriately, and also to protect our own staff, the healthcare personnel, from getting infected. And what has the hospital done to this effect? Number one, we have developed a protocol that the hospital, all the hospital staff must follow in terms of prevention of this disease.
But as far as psychiatric hospital is concerned, we are fully prepared. By the time you are entering into the hospital, you must have seen the basin that we put there. You have to wash your hand before you come into this hospital. And just last week again, the management, had to get supplies, of most preventive material like the sanitizer, face masks, hand gloves, and all that. And we distributed that around all the clinics and wards. We've been doing all that. And even presently, we have infrared and every other thing. So as far as psychiatric hospital Yaba is concerned, the management are fully prepared, and we are prepared there. And apart from that, we've been doing a kind of psychological work. We've been telling people, don't be panic, because the most important thing is that you must not be panicked. Once you are not panicked, you are not likely to make any mistakes. After that, you take it up from there.
What we are trying to do as a social worker and all the members of psychiatry is to tell people that they should not panic. Because when you have anxiety, it might also lead to a lot of issues. So what we have to do is a global issue whereby every one of us have to take things easy. And how do we take things easy is that we have to follow all the rules and regulations that has been laid down, like maintaining personal hygiene, hand washing. In psychiatry setting, if you start washing your hand more than necessary, they have another name, we call it obsessive compulsive disorder. But now, it's no longer a disorder now. We have to wash our hand properly to make sure that things are well done. And at the same time, we should also try as much as possible to keep a distance from each other, so that even when you want to sneeze or you want to cough, at least that thing will not affect the person nearer to you. So I believe that by the grace of God, our government will do their best to make sure that they curb this coronavirus, COVID-19, so that it won't keep on spreading and spreading and spreading.
Joining me on the program is the Director General of the Nigeria Employers Consultative Association, Dr. Timothy Olawale. It's good to have you on the program.
Thank you very much.
A lot is happening in the world of work, and your association has sent out several press releases. Can you tell us how does this pandemic affect organized private sector in Nigeria?
Well, the effect of pandemic, COVID-19, on businesses is not too far from what the impact has been on the general public. Now, understandably, we have to isolate. Understandably, we have to comply with government instruction to shut down businesses. Understandably, we also know that it's inevitable to maintain social distancing, which means in factories, even where you want to sustain production, definitely you have to space out and reduce your workforce to the barest minimum. But what this means is that in many instances, production is completely nil. You have totally shut down. In some other instances, because of the essential nature of the business, because for food, water, pharmaceuticals, and household goods, it is very important to sustain production so that even when people are isolated or restricted to their homes, there should be constant supply to at least ensure that people continue to live. So what that translates into is that for every businesses that is not producing, that is not making money, there are still overhead costs, labor costs, there are taxes to be paid, there are other obligations that are statutory. Like, for instance, your employee compensation scheme is not deferred, your pension obligations to your workers are not deferred, your medical bills are not deferred, it's even higher now, as well as other obligations like your training fund, 1% of your payroll, and so on and so forth, which means not making money, not being profitable, not producing, not opening up your factory, you still have all these obligations. That's aside other bills that you have to pay, utility bills, and so on and so forth. So it's a very serious and narrowing time for businesses in this environment.
Just to sorry for cutting you in. We understand the fact that it's an harrowing time for businesses and there are a lot of bills to be paid. Recently, there was a press release that you circulated to newsrooms across the country as regards your request for what specifically the federal government wants to do for the organized private sector to ensure that there's a continuing smooth running of businesses. Can you share with us, is there any development regarding this request?
Let me start by touching on some of the requests we made just to ensure that businesses survive during this pandemic. Businesses are sustainable even beyond this period. The first one is to look at how government can also ameliorate some of the expenses that are incurred by businesses without compromising all the directives that government has passed on curtailing in the attempt to curtail the pandemic. For instance, we've also given best practices and developments from other climes as reference point.
Talking about how the global world is actually trying to tackle the pandemic to ensure that the sufferings from the organized private sector is reduced to the barest minimum. What would be your expectations from the federal government?
So what we are saying is that we should take learning points from those other countries in the world who are also passing through the same experience as us. Where in countries like Japan, New Zealand, Australia, France, UK, salaries of workers are outrightly paid. Workers that are off work in the spirit of isolation, salaries are either outrightly paid or highly subsidized up to 70%, with employers paying just 30% of it. You cannot be saying that employers should not lay off workers in one breath and also expect them to continue to pay taxes, to pay all regulatory obligations, as well as continue to carry the burden of paying salaries for work not done.
So now the International Labour, sorry to cut you in, the International Labour Organization Director General Guy Ryder says that between 5.3 million jobs and 24.7 million jobs will be lost in the year 2020. It's not good news. In the United States of America, there are a lot of people that are out of jobs already. We don't know what our situation will be in Nigeria. As the Director General of the Nigeria Employers Consultative Association, do you think maybe tax relief would actually help matters?
In fact, that is the crux of all the discussion that has been going on, that we could save jobs and not get to that point. Issue of tax rebates, tax deferral. If you look at the stimulus package that was in the stimulus package bill recently, just 2 days ago, passed by the House of Representatives and sent to the Senate for concurrence. There is a package there that talks of some sort of succor with regards to taxation, corporate tax reduction. What we are saying is that it should not be complicated. The reduction should be in absolute terms. Out of the 30% corporate tax, either you reduce 10% or 15% or 20%, let it be in absolute terms so that there's no ambiguity. Secondly, the effective date for the tax relief, the National Assembly is putting it for 2021, when the problem is biting now. How do businesses survive till 2021? That is the issue. So whatever palliative you are going to give, whatever support you are going to give or relief given to business should be now, should have effect now. What the central bank has done to make a pool of funds available to support businesses in specific sector is commendable. However, we also believe it's not far-reaching enough. They should take a cue from US and other Western world. They are giving outright bailout and grants to businesses, especially in the aviation, in the hospitality, and the pharmaceutical companies. What they need are not loans when they are not productive. What they need are grants that will ensure their sustenance. When you give them loans, you are further increasing their burdens, and it's not sustainable. So they have to take a second look at their interventions so that it will be far-reaching enough, it will achieve the desired impact.
So moving forward, what would you think can be done as a matter of urgency to ensure that we don't have thousands of people losing their jobs? Because already we have a huge number of unemployed youth in the country. How are we sure that this is not going to triple the situation already that we have faced with in the country?
As much as it is possible, businesses should be given the leeway to continue to produce. There could be rules and regulations with regards to the rules of engagement. Like for instance, if in your factory you have 50, 60, 70 employees, you could scale down to between 10 and 15 so that social distancing can be maintained. Highest level of hygiene will also be maintained, and regulatory bodies, inspectors can also monitor to ensure compliance. But totally shutting down may not be the answer. It will have adverse effect on continued employment of their workers. The second one is what Lagos State government is already acting upon in engagement with them. Logistics is very important for business, especially those that are in the business of distributing essential goods. Pharmaceutical products, household goods, products, foods, and beverages that are necessary for the sustenance of people while they are confined to their homes and locality. These products must get to the end users and the consumers if they must survive this period of confinement. Our law enforcement agents must be educated enough to know that these essential goods must be allowed to move. We've had instances in some states where total lockdown has been introduced. You can't get the state, you can't get out of the state. It's just a matter of time before people start scrambling for these essential commodities and for them to record shortages. And this will compound the problem more. Once we put the machinery in motion for businesses to be able to get to the masses with these goods and their products. And that's very important.
Very quickly, I'm also concerned about the reduction in the price of PMS, since that's the sole means of livelihood in Nigeria. What are with your experience as an organized private sector manager, would you say the numbers are going to add up anytime from now?
Well, we thank the federal government for the reduction from 145 to 125. But what we've been advocating all along is not price reduction, but rather total deregulation of the PMS regime. Total deregulation means that market forces will determine what the pump price will be. Now, despite the fact that we know crude oil price has dropped to 23, 24, or in the neighborhood of sub 30, yet we are selling at 125. From our calculation, with the processing cost and down the line, it should even be below 100 naira per liter. But what we are saying is that if crude oil price appreciates, let the pump price appreciate accordingly. Let the market forces dictate. That way there will be equity. Number two, it will also impact on the subsidy regime. We don't want the sustenance of subsidy. We had said benefits of subsidy is not trickling down to every Nigerian. There are those who are benefiting from it and they want it to continue to exist. Government should muster the willpower, the political willpower, and stop the subsidy regime. Whatever inflow is generated from it or whatever is saved should be channeled to infrastructural development that every Nigerian will benefit from. That is our position with regards to the pump price reduction. What we want is total deregulation.
Finally, you mentioned that the National Assembly, the plans or the palliative that they have for organized private sector is scheduled for 2021. What do you think can be done? What intervention do you think the federal government and relevant stakeholders, maybe the Minister for Finance, can do to ensure that everything is still stable while the global community fight against COVID-19?
It is the tax component of the stimulus package bill that is deferred to be in 2021. But what could be done immediately, and it remains to be seen when it will even be effective. The entire bill is still not yet concurred to by the Senate. It has gone on recess. And apart from that, the President also had to assent to it before it comes into force. So it's not as if it's already having impact or it will have impact even if all those elements of suggestions are taken on board. But what can be done first is for the Senate to take on board all those suggestions that has come up in the course of the public reviewing and making interventions with regards to what has come out of the House of Representatives. We understand that the emergency nature and the urgency it required is what prevents them to pass through due process of public hearing or seeking wider consultation. But the much that has been sent to them, they should make sure that they reflect it in it. and the speed that is desired for it to take almost immediate effect is what is the crux of the matter. How the Senate is going to fast track and have an emergency sitting to pass it with all the improvement on it, and the president also assents to it, is very, very vital and important, because the package, the stimulus package or the relief is required now by Nigerians. I also want to add that it's not just businesses. If you are asking the masses to self-isolate, especially those in the informal sector,
AdSense,
those whose means of livelihood is what they are able to make on a daily basis, it will be unthinkable for them just to want to go and hibernate in their homes and do nothing for 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. It's a matter of survival. Simple logic dictates that they will not comply. Government must be able to do certain things to encourage them. The UK government, the Prime Minister announced that £2,500 will be given to every artisan every month.
The United States also has something similar.
Yes, US has something similar. Basically, all the Western countries have announced one package or the other. Nigeria should also do the same.
Do we have it in our budget?
It's not. Those ones also did not provide for it in their budget.
That's true.
If we can have budget lines like 27 billion naira to renovate the National Assembly, there is nothing that says they cannot productively divert that to sort out very crucial issues like this.
That's if it's not been spent.
Yes, National Assembly will not collapse. It will still be there. It's still beautiful. So let the 27 billion naira be channeled to provide relief and succor for the masses of Nigeria that are idle at home now, that are in patriotic disposition have decided to stay at home, even in hunger.
It was an interesting conversation I had with you. As always, thank you very much for spending time with us on Labor Lens. Despite the COVID-19 pandemic, we take this very seriously and we do appreciate.
It's my pleasure.
And that's all we can take on today's edition of the program. Join us next week for a fresh edition of the show. I am Sharon Ijason. Thanks for watching, and remember, labor creates wealth.